G'day, welcome to another episode of Built by Dan and yet another installment in my GT40 kit build series. If you didn't see the last episode, go check it out. I managed to get the dash fitted in the GT40 and today I'm going to take that next step and start to cut out for my gauges and hopefully get my gauges test fit. I think it's just that next step in trying to get this GT40 to look more like a car and less like a chassis with a couple of components bolted to it. So let's get stuck into it. So just as a quick refresher, this is how the dash came up all installed in my GT40, and today I will be installing my gauges. So a quick overview of the gauges that came as part of the kit. So I've got an 8,000 RPM tachometer, voltmeter, 300 kilometer an hour speedometer, water temperature, oil pressure, oil temperature, fuel gauge, and then an additional fuel gauge because we've got the two tanks. They can be monitored independently. The only other thing that I'm tracking for today is I want to do the cutouts for the air conditioning vents. So whilst I've got the hole saw out, I may as well get them done and at least have the face of the dash looking somewhat complete. Obviously there's still switches to go in. I may look at them towards the end. Or not overly happy with the switches provided in the kit, so I think I might need to go and buy myself some Lucas switches to replace some of them just to ensure some consistency. So what I've done here is actually just drawn up on CAD and printed out one-to-one the size of the hole saw that I'm going to be using. Doing this to try and identify where the center is for each hole so I can drill a pilot hole before I go ahead and start drilling with the hole saw. So I'll jump into the car now and I'll step you through the process that I'm intending to follow to complete this step in the build. Alright, so I'm sitting on the driver's side of the vehicle, and if I flip you around, this is what I'm currently seeing. So I've got an air conditioning vent to go on the passenger side. I'm going to have to put my tachometer on this side because legally I have to have my speedometer in the center. I haven't quite worked out the order of the other smaller gauges through here. So there's 5 on that side and then 1 over this side and another air conditioning vent on the driver's side. So in terms of the process to complete these cutouts, I'm not sure if it comes up on camera. I think I can just see here, there's like a little spot there. So there's like a little raised little knob, I suppose you'd say, like a little pimple at each of the gauges, which they look pretty damn center, but being a small little raised pimple, I can't really use that to drill or as a guide for my drill because the drill is just going to slide off that as soon as it starts spinning. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to sand that down, and using my paper cutouts, I will use them to position them where I want them so that they're centered on the little raised gauge section here. And then I can use the lines on that circle template to find the center and drill a pilot hole. So I think I'm pretty set on cutting this in the car, only because it actually holds the dash in a really good position. It's nice and sturdy. If I was to take it out and put it on, say, a couple of carpenter's horses or something out on the driveway to try and cut this outside, which I would prefer to do just because of the mess, but there's just nothing, there's no like nice way that it's for it to sit on the horses to do a really sort of neat job and for me to be comfortable that I can get a good position, things aren't going to move as I start drilling. So yes, it's going to make a mess, but I think I'm going to get a better outcome and a better quality of finish if I just drill these out in the car. Hoping it won't be too long a process, but we'll see how we go. I'm going to start sanding those little pimples down in the center of each gauge and setting up my templates, and I'll check back in once I've got that done. I'd like to interrupt today's episode to thank Brilliant for sponsoring yet another episode. Brilliant is a web-based math, science and computer science learning resource for all ages and skill levels, covering the basics all the way through to advanced. Brilliant provides short, interactive courses on a whole range of math and science topics, making learning new skills and topics fun and engaging by making learning hands-on. You've all seen me apply a very systematic approach to building my GT40. Well, that comes from exercising my brain with interactive learning platforms like Brilliant. Over time, developing the analytical skills required to dissect a problem or equation into smaller, manageable portions, whilst also keeping an eye on the big picture and the impact my current actions or processes may have on future steps. I've been using the Brilliant platform for some time now, and after completing my first course on scientific thinking, I thought I'd move on to something I haven't studied in quite some time: an introduction to algebra. I was a bit rusty to start off with, but the way Brilliant structure their courses, it is quite intuitive. The Brilliant website is compatible on desktop as well as mobile devices, so you can get your daily fix whether you are sitting at your desk or on the move. So if you're looking for a new challenge or something to keep your mind active over the upcoming holiday season, be sure to visit brilliant.org/builtbydan or click on the link in the description below and get started for free. On top of that, the first 200 of you will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription, giving you access to all courses available with new content being added monthly. So that's it. I will now look to go and grab my hole saws and start cutting. Only thing I think I might do is just try and get a spirit level and run it along and just see how well each of the center of these smaller gauges line up, because they all seem to sort of be set at that same level. It'll just be another bit of a check measure for me to make sure that I've got them pretty well level, and we'll start with a pilot hole first and then start coring out those holes. So that's all the holes cut out. I'm going to clean all this up, and I probably will now pull it out to take it outside to sand up and just sort of trim up all these edges, and then I can bring it back in and get it all set back in place. And I really want to get these gauges test fit. Alright, so I've just cleaned up a little bit, but before I take the dash out, just thought I'd give you a bit more of a close-up look at how it all came up just with the raw hole saw cuts. I'm actually pretty happy with it so far. Let's remove a little bit more tape. I am just going to take it out and take it outside now, so you can see there's a lot of fibres there that are just sort of hanging on. I'm just going to go sand them back a little bit, and I'll probably take a gauge out of the box just to test fit a gauge of each size, and also the air conditioning vent, just to make sure that they will all fit. If not, I'll just have to keep sanding a little bit more out until I can get them to pop in and sit nice and snug. Okay, so I've got the dash all sanded up and back in the garage now. I did just use a flat wheel on the drill to sand down the inside of those cuts. I have just dropped a gauge of each size in to check for fitment, and happy to say that everything fits up quite well. There's a little bit of play, but that's good because when it gets lined with leather, they'll be able to tuck that in and make sure that doesn't lift, and that'll make it a bit more snug for the gauges. So let's have a look. So I've just wiped it all down with a wet cloth to try and get rid of some of that fiberglass dust. I've just got the speedometer sitting there, and if I drop it into the other one, it's a bit hard one-handed, but fits nicely in there, so the tachometer is the same size. So it's sitting nicely. I've got the air conditioning vent here. Drops into the other side quite nicely as well. And I've just got one of the fuel gauges here. And I can basically drop this into any of these smaller gauge holes, and it fits in nicely. So I think I'm going to fit the gauges off into the dash and then fit the dash into the vehicle. Only because I think it'll be easier than trying to get my hand in behind to do the screws up on the back of the gauges. So they do just have thread on them, and there's a little nut, plastic nut that goes on the back to hold them in place. So I'm going to go ahead, fit them off, and I'll then drop the dash back into the vehicle. I will show you how it all looks once all those gauges are fitted off and it's back in the car. All right, so here we go, the big reveal. Really happy with the way this is looking. So I haven't really finalized placement, but I've got fuel, speedo, fuel, volts, oil pressure, oil temperature, water temperature, and tachometer. It's all coming together. I did actually try and fix off the or adjust the steering column. It's sitting really good. Like you can sort of see that there's a nice little gap there. I did sand that back a little bit when I was just sanding around the inside of those gauge cutouts. So I think that's definitely helped a little bit, but I do notice that on the side here, it's actually hitting the steering column, the actual fiberglass dash. It just hasn't had quite enough cutout just back here. So next time I have it out, I'm gonna have to trim a little bit there. There's a few other little bits that I still wanna do. I still wanna round off these corners a little bit. I'm still undecided whether I take another 5mm off the bottom here. I think I will, because as I said in my previous episode, there'll be carpet there, which will probably take up at least 5mm anyway. So once carpet's in, if it's not trimmed any further, it's then gonna just push it up higher, which is not what I want. And the next step will be switches. So there are a number of switches that will get located through here. There's also a number of warning lights that will probably get located either up here or down sort of between the gauges. I'll show you what they are in a moment. The other thing is I still have ignition. So there is a key ignition as well as a push button start. So I'm thinking maybe somewhere around here, or maybe at least have the key or maybe the push button start, I don't know. The other thing is there's a couple of other little bits and pieces that I'll probably actually look to hide up under the dash here, just because, you know, they're sort of mod cons. They're not really sort of fitting with the original vehicle, and they just look a little bit too contemporary. So if I can hide them out of the way, that'll probably be, if I'm allowed to, my hazard lights. Potentially even the start button. It'd be nice maybe to have a key and then a start button underneath, just so it's out of the way. Again, it's sort of a modern touch rather than in keeping with the traditional or original sort of layout. So I think that's enough of staring at this dash. I have been sitting here for a little while now, just taking it all in. Very happy with myself and how it's coming together. I'll jump out now and I'll give you a look at the different switches that came in the kit. There's at least one in particular that I want to replace, and that is the indicator switch. So let's go have a look. Just wanted to quickly try and grab a shot of the entire dash in one frame. So there it is, just looking through the rear window in the rear firewall. Okay, switches. So we've got a dial for the windscreen wipers. They do have an aluminium knob to go on there, and there's a little symbol label to go in the middle. I've got lights, so I think it's headlight and then second headlight, so it's probably a headlight and fog light. Again, I've got the aluminium knobs to go on there. They do have all the mounting brackets. I've got to work out how I'm actually going to fit them. I'm not sure I don't think I'm going to be able to screw them in, so it might just need some sort of adhesive that I can then just push these onto and screw them into the onto the knobs, just to get them to fit up and then hold it in place until the adhesive sets. I have my key ignition. I've got a hazard light switch. I've got my little horn button. This is my indicator switch that I just don't like. I would rather have one of the Lucas switches for the indicator. In fact, I'd probably just be interested in seeing if I can find something a bit more original for the dials as well. I'd have to go and do some research and see what they actually look like and what might be available out there. Now, in terms of the warning lights, here we've got brakes, we've got lights, so we've got seat belts, reminder, and then indicator lights. So these all need to be mounted in the dash, and I'll have to sort out what the layout of those is going to be once I can confirm whether I'm going to continue to use these ones that are supplied or whether I'm going to source my own. I don't want to start fitting any of these off until I know which way I'm going, because I want to make sure that I cut the holes the right size and get the spacing for all the switches correct. Okay, so that's it for today's episode. I feel like it's probably been a fairly quick one or short one. Let's see how we go in the editing process. If you're enjoying these episodes, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future updates, and leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. If you've got any comments or feedback, always happy to hear it, and always take it on board as well. So I may not necessarily proceed as per your recommendation, but I'll definitely take it all into consideration. Thanks again. Look forward to you tuning in next episode.